Welcome in, everybody, to PaperGold podcast. This is not the Brady Bunch. This is something that I've been working on. I think I've been working on this for over a year now. I have been trying to get a panel discussion of former teachers who are now full-time resellers to talk about the transition, talk about their life now. And we all have similar stories, but we all have varied stories. And we have 6 phenomenal stories to share with all of you today. We all came from the same profession. You can tell we're all smiling now for some reason at the same time of day. So we're going to tell you our stories. And for those of you that do watch this and have questions, definitely put the questions in the comments section and we will all answer your questions. So I'm just going to call on each one of you to start. Just introduce yourself, tell us where you are geographically, whatever we need to know, and then we'll get into some conversation about this. So Orlando, we're going to start with you since you are the grandfather of all of this for us. So Orlando, please introduce yourself and tell everybody what the story is.
Is that because I officially look like a grandfather? I'm just asking, but hey,
not even close.
I appreciate everyone here. We're all educators here. We've all made that leap into full-time reselling. And my name's Orlando. I do a podcast with my friend Mike. It's called PaperGold Podcast. We're located in San Diego. I've been a part-time seller for 10 plus years, and I went full-time 7 years ago. And the funny story about that one is right at the moment that I was going to go full-time, I decided to go full-time because I realized I was making more money on eBay than I was being an administrator. And my kids were growing, and I kind of said, you know what? I want to spend more time with my boys. I loved being in education, and I loved every single family I was working with. But then I realized I wasn't giving enough time to my own family, to my own kids. And I realized that with reselling, I could do that. And so I stepped away. I went full time. And I got to tell you, the last 7 years have been amazing. I have had so many experiences with my kids. I've been able to be so involved in their lives. It's just been a blessing this entire time. And at the same time, I was going full time reselling. My friend Mike, who was a teacher, I was an administrator at that time. I was a teacher. He was a teacher, and every once in a while, I'd go into his classroom and I'd be like, "Hey, I kind of sold this," and he actually wanted to listen and he wanted to talk about things, and it was kind of weird, right? Because I'm here like this, school administrator coming in and talking about some Rain Spooner shirt that I paid $5 for that I sold for $80 or whatever, right? Or some random like Game Boy game or something. But he was interested, and as I was stepping away, he goes, Orlando, maybe we should do something. Maybe we do some kind of, I don't know, YouTube channel or something where, you are, the teacher and I'm I'm trying to figure things out. I'm like the student. And we said, let's do this. And we decided to make it a podcast. This was the only podcast at that time was Scavenger Life, and who, to me, they are the original OG reselling podcast. But Mike and I just were gonna do it for fun. We're just saying, hey, let's just document this, right? Let's not try to be these gurus. Let's not try to be these people that teach down to everyone. Let's just share our experience. And I remember the first 2 episodes, we never released those because they were just terrible. It's terrible. And we were educators, right? You would think educators would be comfortable in front of a microphone in a room with nobody watching them talking, but we just didn't feel comfortable. Well, after the first week or so, like we got 100 listeners, and we're like, wow, 100 listens. We were like so pumped. Like that was the pinnacle for us at that time. And long story short, we ended up starting getting connected in the reselling community. I always tell people when they want to go full time, make sure you have a network of other resellers, right? And this is why this podcast right here that we're doing is so important, because I think this is going to bring a lot of value. And so over time, got connected with eBay, started growing, and now we have a podcast. I think we're up on episode 425, and
425 episodes talking about reselling.
Yeah,
that is utterly amazing, Orlando.
And it never gets old. So anyways, that's Mike and I, PaperGold Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Joji.
How's it going?
Good,
so my name is Joji. Yeah, let's do it. My name is Joji Davenport.
Like the 5th time this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Max, always loved doing this because I think we work really well together and we provide a lot of value. So let's do it. So what's up, everyone? My name is Joji Davenport. I was formerly a high school chemistry teacher for about 7 years and then just recently left my job. And the reason for that was when my wife and I were 23, we're the same age, we said, hey, we really want to retire early. We want to reach financial independence. Our goal was 35, which was a 12-year mark. and we wanted to hit like a $2 million net worth. That was our goal. The idea at that time was like, hey, if we can hit, $2 million, we would essentially be able to withdraw a certain, 4% of that portfolio every year and never have to work again. As the years went on and we, kept saving money, investing money, we learned that the goal isn't just to retire early and sit on the couch and do nothing. It's actually, like Orlando mentions, just to spend every single day the way that you want to spend it. So if you want to wake up early in the morning, go to the gym,
Yep.
and then go play pickleball and then work on your side business, you can do that. Or, if you want to, let's say sleep in that day, you can do that. Or if you want to spend time with the kids, you can do that. So I decided to walk away from teaching this year just because selling books on Amazon through online book arbitrage, which is what I do, was it allowed us to save enough money where I was like, it was making more money than teaching. We already were getting close to that number anyways. And so we said, what are we doing? Like, we're not to that $2 million, mark yet, but we're certainly very close to it. And we're like, the goal is never to, just stop working and never work again. It's like, actually, when you decide to pursue your passion and you decide to do what, the things that you want to do, like that often makes money. And so we said, okay, we're not there yet, but we're close enough where the income we'll make from just selling books and our side hustles will bring us there. And so
You
now,
couldn't wait to get out, is what you're really saying.
yeah. So, I love teaching, but at the same time, like Orlando mentions, and like as everyone here probably mentioned, is that you have to be there, 7:55 a.m. every single day, no matter what. Like there's no flexibility with that. And I want to be able to spend time doing things I want to do, which is why I'm also here today, because Max asked me to be here, and it's like, we have the opportunity to say no, but I also feel like there's a lot of value here. And so I want to be here and I enjoy being here. But that's kind of my story. Yeah, very short.
Right. But also in a nutshell, and I want to get into this a little bit later. You were selling books on Amazon. That was the primary focus.
Right.
And then you've developed that into a software program. If you
Right.
could just give us the nutshell of that software program, please.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, so my good friend and business partner, Victor Gallegos, he's also a government employee that retired at the age of 37. Similar to me, we essentially just used book selling as a way to make money so that we could, invest all of the money we made from, his government job, he would invest, and all the money from my teaching job, we would invest. Anyways, we got together and said, hey, it's actually pretty difficult for a lot of people to source books directly from Amazon. Let's make it easier for them. So we built a software and kind of put our minds together. And that software is called BookMine. We launched that in February, and it's doing pretty well. Having a lot of time, adding value to the community, helping people do this from home, because it's cool. You can buy books on Amazon at any time during the day from anywhere on planet Earth, as long as you have an internet connection. As long as you're a smart individual and you can read a keepograph and you can look at historical data, then that's really all you need. So yeah, thanks for letting me shout that out.
You're being humble though. You're not helping people. You're changing people's lives, because I have some of those people in my Patreon group and I hear about the success stories, Joji.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into it deeper. I just want to make sure.
Awesome.
And we'll put a link down in the bottom for everybody too.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Joji.
Yep.
Eric. How are you, Eric?
Hey, good. Yeah, my name's Eric. I'm in Michigan. I was a high school business career and technical education teacher for I was in public education for 20 years. The last 5 years, I was kind of in more of a central office position with data and compliance and grants and kind of stuff like that. And then so for the first 10 years or so, I enjoyed the career. And then years 11 through the end, for me, started feeling like Groundhog Day, where there just wasn't a lot of variety. There was, it was the same problems, the same budgets, constraints, the same, you teach a lesson and it's like, oh, the same number of kids are not going to pay attention and ask you a question you already answered. And so,
or teach that same lesson 5 times in that day.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love how you pinpoint year 11 though. I love that.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. The last couple of years were like really bad, but I found out about reselling probably through, a Reezy Resells or a Gary V video.
Sure.
And my mind was kind of blown. I was just like, wait, people are selling stuff on Amazon? Like, I didn't know that was possible. I didn't, and so I kind of started watching some videos, and I downloaded, whatever Scoutly was before it was Scoutly, and walked into a Goodwill and just started scanning some stuff. And I found this book that said it was going to sell for like $60 that I paid 20 cents for. And I was like, well, and I don't have a whole lot invested in this. Let's see. And I got some other stuff around the house that was new or that we could sell, put together like an FBA box, shipped it off, and like got a sale. And like, it was like an addict, man. It was like somebody just put a needle in my vein.
Instant. Yeah,
like,
it was instant. Sure.
this is the coolest thing in the world. And so in 2017, I mean, I was like flipping anything and everything anywhere, eBay, Amazon, Mercari, like any place I could find. Somewhere around 2019, I realized, like somewhere in there, I realized for me personally, Amazon was kind of the long-term play. Like that's where I kind of wanted my home to be. And so I was doing retail arbitrage and online arbitrage. The end of the 2018 school year, I just said, I'm done. I can't do it anymore, and went full time. And then in 2019, I kind of transitioned into doing wholesale on Amazon. I got kind of burned out even with like the constant sourcing, the constant like, I would go on these big shopping trips, multi-state, fill a trailer, and then I would get it all prepped, and then it would sell, and it was just like, all right, buddy, back, get back on the road. And I was scanning clothes one day in a Marshall's, and I was just like, I just had this epiphany, like, you don't have a business, like you don't own a business, you own a job. And I was okay with that because my job I enjoyed that more than my old job. But that's when I was just like, okay, I got to figure out how to turn this into a business that kind of runs independently of me, that doesn't need me for everything. And so I started that journey in kind of 2019, transitioned to wholesale. And today we primarily sell wholesale, but we've also launched a couple private label brands, and we got a small little old hardware store that went out of business that we lease 5 minutes from my house.
Mm-hmm.
And I stroll in about 10 o'clock every day. And I think the leaving the career, without exaggerating, I feel like it added 5 or 10 years to my life expectancy, because it was just such a weight off of of just that, having passion, having, an entrepreneurial spirit, and yet every day just kind of walking into like, okay, kids, let's turn to page 42 and talk about debits and credits again for, year 19 or whatever.
Yeah. One thing that I talk about with friends of mine is that feeling that we all used to get on Sundays, knowing we had Monday to Friday, that whatever that feeling was, it was like a little ball inside of our chest that would explode sometime on Sunday and then go right to our depression zone. Even though we love teaching and coaching, once I retired, I haven't felt that since I left.
Yeah, well, I remember waking up one time after I'd gone full time. I woke up and my wife was like in the bathroom, like I could hear the blow dryer or something, and I was like, "What is she doing? Like, what is she doing?" I was like, "What are you doing?" She was like, "I'm going to work." I was like, "What day is it?" And she goes, "It's Monday." And I was like, I don't hate Mondays. I don't even know it's Monday.
I know.
Like it's just like it's the greatest thing in the world. So that's kind of my story.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Tim, we'll get to you.
All right, awesome. I'm vibing so hard with what these guys are saying. This is sweet.
Yeah.
So I'm Tim. I go by Tim the Slim in the Pure Hustle podcast Discord that Orlando is talking about, and then a few different socials. But I am a 18 months full-time reseller up in Northwest Montana. I was a teacher for 10 years. I was K-12 music education, with most of that time spent in the elementary and middle school music classroom. Loved teaching, loved everything I was doing. I had some of the best administrative support, parent support, like kid support, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, like a lot of these fine folks are saying, it just came down to family. And, for me, I grew this as a side hustle for probably about 7 years or so. And I'm the reseller that does garage sales. I do estate sales. I'll shop from the storage locker and clean out guys. I project myself as a bookseller to get deals like that. I do sell on Amazon FBA with books. Beautiful. And it eventually got to a point to where, I was digesting the content. I was in with Pure Hustle. I was listening to tech and sports content and just all these other different content creators out there, and really started treating it as like a second job, you know, like a part-time gig. And we eventually got to the point where I was doing, I was putting about 15 to 20 hours a week into it on top of teaching, which was killer, working up to teaching. But I was realizing I was making more money on the hourly, at least, than I was teaching.
Yeah, there it is.
And yep, it got to that point where I was saying, okay, well, if I put the same effort in, you know, I should be able to do more. Had that conversation with my wife, and, you know, 18 months, this is the second school year that I've not been in the classroom, and, you know, haven't looked back yet. Like, we're still paying the mortgage. Things are great. I'm making about 1.5 times what I was as a teacher, and have that freedom and flexibility for my family. My wife is a teacher. She's a second grade teacher. And she loves what she does, but I'll tell you what, when you have two teachers, we have two kids, you know, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And when you're going in the mornings and you're lugging your kids there at 7 a.m, it's like, okay, well, now mom and dad have to work. And then you're at the end of the day, they have to stay there for another hour. And okay, well, mom and dad have to work. And, you know, it's almost, resentment might be strong, but they it was tough, you know, it's tough. But now, you know, I can free her up for when she needs to be on in the classroom or on report card time and those kind of things. And then, you know, vice versa, in the summer, I can hit sourcing really, really hard, hit the garage sales and stuff, and she could be with the kids. And so it's been great for our family, and great for stress, for mental health, all that good stuff.
Does she get a little jealous of your day-to-day now?
She does. I would like to think she does, although she is not the reseller at all. She wants nothing to do with it. She kind of glazes over when I talk about it. She's like, "Oh, yeah, that's great, Tim. Go share it in one of your Discords, because that's great."
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we're all here. Thank you, Tim. And last but not least, certainly, Doug.
Hey guys, my name's Doug. From Central Nebraska. My wife and I are both full-time resellers for 5 years now. We're both former teachers. She taught high school English for a couple of years, and then we started having kids, and she resigned so we didn't have to pay daycare, and started staying home with our kids. We have 5 kids, 4 together, and one is her stepdaughter, my daughter from another marriage. And I guess I taught elementary PE for 7 years, and I resigned actually right before COVID hit. So 2019 December is when I went into my administrator's office and talked to him and said, you know, this eBay thing's growing so much where I get home at night and I don't have time for my family. I have the package orders and it's just like exploding, and I can't do both anymore. So that's kind of the moment when I decided to go full time. My original, when I started reselling, it was back when I was in college. So I've been reselling on eBay for about 14 years, part-time, until I resigned in 2019. But it all started in Goodwill. I found a Polaroid Alpha 1, I think it's called, camera, the one that's like an accordion that pops up. And I paid $5 and sold it for $250 in like 2 days. And that was kind of like the light going on for me, is like, wow, what if I just went to garage sales and thrift stores and I, you know, found a bunch of these things, I could make a side hustle out of it. And I got on YouTube and found videos, and it ended up turning into a full-time business. But as far as like teaching goes, elementary PE is, in my opinion, probably one of the best jobs in the world. You get to play games for a living.
I was gonna say, I mean, you were
You guys-
an elementary school PE teacher.
Yeah, and a lot of you
We
guys
all
are high
dreamed of
school.
that
I don't
when we were
know.
teaching.
I don't know how you do high school. I couldn't put up with attitudes and that kind of thing. But PE, especially elementary PE, like the kids, I didn't have to really deal with behavioral issues very often, because kids walk in, they want to be there, they're excited. And if you just make them sit out for, you know, 2 minutes, they're like, oh, I'm going to, you know, sharpen up. And so like behavior issues weren't an issue. And it was my dream job. But at some point, you know, family became more important, and we decided to take the leap. The timing was a little weird, just right before COVID, because once I resigned, then a lot of people started working from home, and especially all over the country, there's more eBay sellers, so the competition's more. And so it
Mhm.
was it was a struggle, but I mean, as you guys know, there's plenty of stuff out there, and we worked through it and kept growing our business, and here we are today.
And you make a very important point I want to highlight here. You sold one item you bought for $5, sold it for $220. I think all of us here have had that moment, maybe even thousands of times, where we had that moment while we were teaching and going, man, this is how much I make as a teacher. I mean, I used to make $125 a day as a high school teacher.
Yeah.
I lost money as a coach, believe me.
Yeah.
But I would sell books, and I would sell a $300 book. That's 2.5 days of teaching for me. And I think probably we all have that story where we started looking at the option of what we are doing as a side hustle and looking at it as a full-time seller. So, you know, tell us about that journey. For me, I thought about it for about 2 years before I made the decision to go full-time. I said for myself, once I hit this number as a reseller, then I'm going to retire, but I need to hit a certain number consistently. So gentlemen, what was that tipping point?
So let me jump in real quick. Can everybody hear
Yeah.
me all right?
Yeah, loud and clear.
I changed microphones, so hopefully things are better now. I don't know what the audio was like before. As a podcast, I'm very careful about that. So, it's funny. All of us are educators, and many of the people that are watching right now are listening, and maybe they go to a conference. And I remember I went to an AP World Conference. I think it was back in 2010 or something, and they were giving away textbooks. They were giving away AP textbooks, right?
Don't tell Joji that. Don't tell Joji. What do you
I know, but it was crazy to me because I remember they gave away like 30 textbooks, right? And it was all the same. And I was being charitable at that time, and I went back to my school. I'm like, hey, we can save ourselves, I don't know what it was, like $5,000, whatever, because textbooks at that time were like 150 a pop or whatever it was, right? And I ended up donating it to the school, but I kept like a couple of them. And then I go, I wonder what these go for on Amazon, right? And this is before FBA was a big thing. And I remember I sold a couple for like 100 and something a piece. And I was like, wait a second, I just gave away thousands of dollars. And the school I was at, like, it wasn't like they were struggling. Like, they could have paid for it. I just kind of was, I didn't know. I didn't know any better. And then I remember this one summer where things were just rough. Like, you know how it is. Like, sometimes we end up teaching summer school in the summer to maybe make ends meet, or we pick up some, Craigslist job or something, right, to make that bridge. And I remember I ended up going to another AP conference, and I picked up like 50 textbooks, and I held on to those textbooks, and that's how I paid my rent that summer. I remember, and I sold all these books on Amazon, and that was the good old days where, I didn't know any better. I would go to the dollar store and pick up like a bubble mailer, and then I'd go to the post office and I pay full price for my postage and all that. But it hit me, but it didn't really hit me yet. Right, I think shows like ours right now that we're doing allow people to actually understand what is happening. Right,
Yeah, because we didn't have a lot of YouTubers or Instagrammers out there guiding us or mentoring us, or being able to reach out to anybody. I mean, for me, going back that far is a blur. It's just a complete blur because I was learning as I go. Nobody was out there selling books. The first time I saw someone selling books, it was Reezy. That was the first time I said, oh, this is interesting. What is this all about? But it was the opposite of what I did. He was scanning books, and he was calling the books that I like duds. So there was a engine starting to go into my head and turning the gears about what my future was eventually going to look like.
Yeah, I just want to let people know, just it'll feel really surreal once you start selling. Once you start making that money, you're gonna go like, wait, this is weird. Like, seriously, I went to a garage sale and I paid like $10 and I made like $500. Like, and you tell people, and they're gonna, now it's more accepted. But when I was doing this back in 2015, 2016, and so on, people were like, what? No, you got lucky, right? You got lucky. You didn't know what you're doing. And I want to encourage those that are listening, like, once you start doing that, understand you can replicate that. You can scale that, right? You can actually make it happen. Like everybody here on the panel is saying, you can actually walk away and have that time freedom that you want. So I started realizing that, like I said, towards right the beginning of the podcast, when I was like, wait a second, I was looking at, I remember my PayPal. This is the good old days when you got paid via PayPal and eBay. And I go, this is crazy. I've never had this much money in my savings at that time. And it's very, and I would say it's even more possible now than ever before to do something like this.
I would say for me, like, it's easier for me to say, I'm just going to resign and quit teaching, especially when I live in Nebraska and cost of living isn't anywhere near what you guys have to deal with in Florida, California. For me, my business grew pretty even to what my teaching salary was. And so I could do the math and I could figure that, if I have all these extra hours, at the end of the day, it's going to be a leap. It's going to be scary. You're quitting this full-time job, health insurance, stability, and you're going off on this business venture. It's going to be a scary decision. But for me, where our bills were lower and we could afford to pay, if we just had the reselling income, we could afford to pay our bills and get by. And hopefully we grow it to where we're having, contributing to savings and investments and all that kind of stuff. And then you factor that in with the increased freedom and family time and being able to go to all your kids' sporting events. And it was a no-brainer for me, but I could understand where people are living in Washington or California and they're paying 3 times more for rent than I am, or mortgage, and so it's a lot scarier for them.
So would you say once you decided and you spoke to your wife about this, it was a very quick transition from teaching to full-time reselling?
Yeah, it's gonna, I think the most difficult transition was just all the free time. You have to learn to self-motivate, when you have a full-time job and you're told to be somewhere and you're told, you can leave at this time, and then you have the freedom to sleep into 11 if you want to, or, stay up till 2 o'clock, and, you have to self-motivate. You have to, hey, say I have to do this many listings a day. I have to get all my packages out. I have to, it's all on you. It's not someone, you don't have a boss anymore, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Because the freedom's great, but you also have to be self-motivated,
Yeah. Joji, for you, because I remember you and I were talking while you were still teaching.
Yeah.
You were picking my brain a couple of years ago on what was going to happen and should you do it. So I don't think you waited as long as I did, because I definitely had a 2-year plan to get out of teaching.
Right.
What was your thought process? I know in the introduction, you talk about a $2 million mark. That was a goal for you and your wife, but I know you've gotten out quicker than that. So what was that like for you and your family?
Yeah. I think really, so when I started my YouTube channel, it was to really help people. I was like, wow, selling books on Amazon is literally changing my life like every year. And I was like, I got to help other people out. Ironically, in the beginning, I was very, and even though I wanted to help people, I was a little bit afraid in the beginning, because I was like, well, if I teach people how to do this, then there's more competition for me. But in reality, the more value I added, the more I gave away, the more I actually returned. And so that ended up with partnerships, with like Steve Rakin and you, and it led to like building the A2A masterclass, and it led to meeting Victor and building BookMine. So it's like, the YouTube channel really took off, and kind of what came from it was what gave me that extra assurance, where it was like, yeah, of course, like, yeah, we have money saved and invested, and that was the original plan. Like, let's live off that nest egg. And at the same time, I knew that if I leave teaching, I still have selling books on Amazon. Like, that's still what I would consider a reliable source of income. But then now I also have an additional source of income, which is what comes from the, the connections that I've been able to make in the community. And that also brings money in. So I got to the point where I was like, okay, with BookMine, with also selling books on Amazon, with, our portfolio, it's like, it doesn't make sense to not do this. Like, it was so far beyond like completely stable, where it was just honestly a matter of like convincing my wife, because one of the holdups for my wife, and this is something I think we should talk about, is like getting your spouse on board is not an easy thing, because you see a lot, things in life through your own perspective and they see it through their own perspective. And so my wife's like, yeah, but then, if you don't teach any longer, then we have to pay for health insurance. Also, like, I like that you're a teacher because I feel like you're adding value to the world. If you are reselling books, are you actually like adding value to the world? Like, I want my significant
Yeah.
other to actually be somebody that is contributing to this world. And I'm not saying, and I don't think she's saying that if you're a reseller, you're not. It's just like it was helping her cross the bridge, like, showing her the numbers and like saying like, look, baby, we could actually like never work again and never make a dollar for like a decade and we'd still have money. And I'm like that's actually the numbers. Like, that's what it looks like. And then the thing that really got us over to that point was like, Maya, think about all of the time that we would get with our son and all the time that I can free up for you. Like, I can be here every day in the morning. And when our son wakes up at 6 a.m. and wants to go outside and look at cars driving on the highway, I can do that. And like, you can sleep in, and, you love to swim. So when you want to go swimming, like, I can be here in the middle of the day and I can watch him, as you go swim. So it was more of like, let's create the life that we want to live. And the way that we can create that life is through not going to a 9-to-5 job. Years earlier, I had also encouraged her and said, hey, you're a very creative person. You can also build your own business. You don't also need to continue to go to the 9-to-5, because she was a second grade elementary school teacher. And so she had already had that success of leaving her job and building a successful business. So I was like, baby, you were able to do that. I'm also doing it right now. I'll continue to be able to do that when we leave teaching, and we'll be able to create the life that we want. So that's my answer.
So I'm figuring she's all on board now with the
Oh yeah,
success,
she loves
with
it.
your success and with Bookmind success with you and Victor. She's definitely all on board.
She's on board. She's all on board now. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Eric?
So for me, it was I was kind of forced out from a mental health standpoint. Like I as kind of a last ditch, because I only needed to go 6 more years. No, 4 more years, I think it was. So it's kind of a last ditch effort. I'm like, I'll switch school districts. I'll, some kind of shot in the arm to kind of like, maybe a new system, and so I took a job in the community where my kids went to school. And I thought, boy, when my 8th grade son graduates, I'll be able to retire. So that was kind of my plan. And the change in school districts was so drastic. Like, it was such a culture, I went from a really, really positive environment to a really, really toxic culture for teachers. And I went from going like, okay, my 5-year plan or whatever it was to go out with my 8th grader. I'm like, okay, if I go out next year, I get to see my son who's a junior. Like, I'll leave when he, graduates. I'll get to see my 8th grader as a freshman. And by Christmas break, I'm like, sorry, buddy, you're not going to see your dad at the high school. Bryce, enjoy your senior year. But I was just like, it was such a weight. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was because I had, passion or like I wanted to do something, be creative. I wanted variety in my life. And it was such a weight that I finally at Christmas break, I told my wife, I'm like, I cannot go back.
Yeah, I think, gosh, you're making such a great point. I don't know if we've all been there, but it's been mentioned already. Just a day in, day out is so regular. There's nothing that changes. We teach the same classes. Sometimes we teach them 3 or 4 times a day, maybe 5 times a day. I mean, I was teaching the same class literally to 150 kids, seniors, every day. So the same thing, it was just nothing. It was Groundhog Day for me.
Yeah.
And it does sound like to me you were probably very close to burnout already.
Sure.
And you were striving to be creative. When you were already reselling, I know you've tried few different things to reselling. When you made that final decision, what made the final decision for you?
I basically just sat with my wife and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I was like, and I wasn't really sure that I was in a pretty good position. And I know a lot of people don't have this luxury. So my wife's has a very good job, great career. And so I had the ability to step into this like reselling full time with a really big safety net that we knew we weren't going to lose our home. We weren't going to, lose our insurances weren't going to go lapse or anything like that. Like we had a big safety net if it failed. And so I was loving that. I was like, this is the first thing that I've really found that I'm like, because I had started a ton of other side hustles, t-shirts, vinyl stickers and banners and signs, deck power washing and restoration. I got always done these little like, and when I found this, I was like, this is I really, really like this.
Were
And
you
so-
doing those other businesses though? I want to touch upon this. Were you doing those
Sure.
other businesses because of the teacher pay and you wanted more money, or you just needed another outlet to sprout and grow from?
I was just, there was just something in me that was just like, wanted to create something, wanted to build something. You know what I mean? It wasn't, because in Michigan, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the states, but Michigan teachers actually get paid pretty well. Like again, relatively speaking, compared to other teachers, but like you can get to like 70, 75 grand with, great benefits, like pretty early in your career. So, compared to some other teachers, I have a buddy of mine that teaches in Kentucky, and he's just like, bro, like, he's like, no, we're half that if we're lucky.
Yeah.
But I think I just wanted to create something, and all those other businesses I started, when it got hard or when it started to not be fun and started to be work, that's when I was just like, this is kind of dumb, like I'll sell off my sticker, vinyl plotter, I'll sell off all that equipment. But for whatever it was with Amazon and reselling in general, like when it got hard, it was just like, I want to push through this. Like I want to keep going with this. And so, I just told my principal, hey, at the end of the year, I'm out. And never looked back. And then I found so many other teachers after I left. They're like, it was like the Matrix. They're like, how did you get out? Like, because so many other teachers want out too. They just can't. They're just in too far. You get in 15, 17, 18 years, and it's like,
How do I get out now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great point, because I got out at 18, but I was making my move at 16.
Sure.
It was in my brain at 16.
Yeah, and if you've got a family, like you've got car payments, mortgages, insurance, all this stuff, it's really, and it takes more money than you think it does. You know what I mean? Like the amount of money you have to make as your side hustle or whatever. But like I said, I was pretty fortunate that I had a pretty big safety net. If it failed, I could always get another job in another career field or back in education, but it's worked out.
Yeah, we can always go. They need teachers everywhere. It's not like we don't have a job if we needed to.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean,
I
they
wanna add on
can't
to what Eric
even
said,
find substitute teachers in Florida right now. It's insane. All right, Tim, your tipping point.
I think Orlando wanted to get in on that one.
Yeah,
Oh,
I just
okay.
wanted to add something. Eric mentioned all the other side hustles he was doing at the same time. And we're all talking about, we were working 9 to 5, right? We were getting that W-2, we're getting that paycheck. And when you're a teacher, your time is very limited in what you can do, right? You're already pretty spent, right? You work your 8-hour day, you come home, you grade 2 to 3 hours or whatever. Maybe you coach, maybe you shoot out emails. And then even on the weekends, right? Your time may be constrained. And what reselling does, and I think Eric brought this about, is not only does it give you time freedom, but it gives you money freedom, in the sense that you can actually turn it on, right? If you want to make a little bit more money, you got to hustle a little more. You got to find more product. You got to source more. And then you can put that into, I don't know, stocks, into crypto, maybe another business, right? Where when you're teaching, you're on a very fixed income, and there's only so much you can do. And now you can do it part-time still, right? You could be a reseller part-time, but and even do those other investments. But without reselling, you're very limited to that 9 to 5 paycheck. So I just wanted to bring that up for people listening.
And Eric makes a beautiful point though. At year 15, you're halfway through, and people I know I felt trapped. I looked at those teachers that were retiring every year. I looked at those 30, 35-year veterans, and I would look at myself and go, they're a shell of a human being.
Yeah.
There's no more emotion. There's no more emotion left. They're just they've been doing the same thing for 20 years.
Well, and I want to hop in.
Yeah, let me say this. I was afraid to become that.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to make, for me, books work out. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. So to hop in on some of that, I'm 33 years old. I'm probably like the definition of a millennial. And I think people kind of in this age bracket, we're told this dream, like that you go to college and you do what you're gonna love. And if you do what you love, you're never gonna work a day in your life. And so you end up, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be a music teacher. I love kids, I love music, and you do that. And don't get me wrong, I did, but then you're so limited by that, and you're tied down by that job, and you're tied down by what you're capped at as your potential. And then there's not much you can do to break out of that within just the teaching realm. Whereas like if you look at kids now, you look at kind of the generations coming up, they've seen this. They've seen like, oh wait, they tried this thing and it didn't work out for them. And now you see a very distinct, at least this is what I see, is it's very much a do your job to make money, right? You're going to try to make as much money as you possibly can and hustle hard. And so you have that time freedom and flexibility over here. But my goal, the goal has shifted from like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Now, don't get me wrong, I do love what I do now, but when you see this shift, and I think that's part of how I jumped on the shift too, is like, if I can do this and I can make that money and I can free that out for my family, that's awesome.
But I think also I can feel like I can say this for all six of us. We're all making a lot more money now than we were working for the Department of Education in each of our states. And I mean, we don't have to divulge our numbers at all, but I can tell by the smiles on your faces, as everybody else will, that we've answered that question. That's for me, that's what I was looking at. I was looking at how much money I was making as a reseller versus what I was making as a teacher, and then after school coaching girls basketball, varsity basketball for 15 years. And I was burnt out. I was just burnt out, and I was still selling books as a side hustle, and it just kept growing and growing for me, until I started thinking of the evolution for me. I started thinking, wow, I'm now making the same amount of money selling used books as I am teaching. Then 6 months later, I'm now making more money selling used books than I am teaching.
So to circle back on that, with the tipping point, or you mentioned $300 book, and it's like, that's like 2 days of my salary. For me, it was garage sale season and estate sale season in Montana. We only have a little window because then it just snows, so you don't have the chance to source. And so a lot of folks run their sales right when school's starting and right when school's ending. And so I'd be sitting in class Thursdays and Fridays, like Fridays specifically, just like in my chair, like looking at Facebook Marketplace, rocking back and forth. Like I could be literally making thousands of dollars right now. And I know I could be, like I've done it before. And then when I went full time, I actually took all my vacation time that I could, and I just took all the last Fridays off and went to crush it, because those are when the sales are best. So
yeah, you're right. I mean, I was going to confess that to all of you right now, is I started taking all Fridays off for estate sales because I was making a lot more money going to estate sales. And by that time I knew, I already had one foot out the door. And I don't want this to turn into, a bash on the teaching profession. I've spoken to all of you individually many times, and we all love teaching. We all love the kids, but the day in, day out, and the rigmarole of education and the crazy nuances of education, I think that's part of what drove us out too. And a lot of teachers still in the matrix, as Eric said, are, they're going to be watching this and they're going to wonder, man, can I get out too? What would you say to them? If one of them wants to get into contact with us, how would you advise them?
I would say, even if you can't get out, like you can, like what Tim was saying, like even if you can find something that you look forward to. Like I used to leave after school and literally, like, because we get out around 2:45, I would try to hit those garage sales before 5 o'clock, before and then I would leave on my planning period or my conference hour. I would literally sprint to, we had a Big Lots the next town over, and I would just be like scanning shampoos, like in Big Lots on my planning period. So even if you can't get out, to become a full-time reseller, like if it can give you something that you like look forward to, and also like you know, it's so easy to make an extra $300, $500, $1,000 a month reselling stuff. It is so simple. I started making a video, just kind of documenting some of the things that I find on Facebook Marketplace. I ran out last Saturday, picked up two things, a camera and a DVD player that made me $450. And it was literally two stops. You know, I was like, hey, you know, pick this up. And like Joji was saying, like when you start to learn like Keepa or like eBay comps, like you're not really it's like you're playing the lottery, but you know the slot machine's gonna hit. You know, the data works in your favor. So I would say to those teachers that are, you know, that are like something in them is this conversation has caused them to like, you know, something is welling up inside them. Like even if you don't want to or can't get to the point of full time, you can absolutely make life-changing money. When I say life-changing, like pay off debt, you know, vacation fund, college, you know, fund, like there's real life-changing money opportunities, even as a side hustle.
Right.
And you
I
said
would,
$1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. You know, $450 from 2 items.
Yeah.
That's 3 days of teaching for most people.
Sure.
and I want to piggyback off what Eric said, because,
Yeah.
you know, obviously for us, full-time reselling has worked out, but it's not for everybody. As far as professions go, if you want to do part-time reselling, teaching's one of the best. I mean, summer's off, garage sale season, you don't have to work during garage sale season.
So true.
It's almost a perfect profession to do part-time reselling. So
Would you say that's why it worked out for all 6 of us? Because we all shared the same profession and we all had the sort of same time off? I mean, we probably all hustled in the summers like it was nobody's business.
mhm.
I think part of it is being a teacher, you have to hustle, right? As a teacher, like it's work, it's a grind, right? I forget what the numbers are, but you know, it's like over half of people that in their first year of teaching, like they quit. They just can't handle it. And I think the numbers go even higher by their 3rd year. So we know what work looks like, right? You know, you hear all these news reports that teachers are lazy and teachers, it's no. Like teachers work hard and they work 40, 50, 60 hours. I mean, I remember at peak times, it could be even 70 hours, depending if I was coaching, doing all these things. But I you know, jumping on what Doug said, yeah, I think teaching does lend to this a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
You know, I think like Q4, right? What a great time, right, to have those 2 weeks off, right?
Yeah,
During
yeah.
Christmas, right? Or even during that Thanksgiving week, like depending on the district you're in, some districts even give you that week of Thanksgiving, right? So I remember that week of Thanksgiving during Q4, you know, Thanksgiving would be on Thursday and we'd be done. You know, we'd have like a professional development Monday, Tuesday. But I remember already Monday, Tuesday, like I'm sourcing like crazy. We're done half day. And Tuesday, I'm, you know, in my vehicle. I'm doing retail arbitrage all day long. You know, Ross doesn't close until like 1 a.m. in some parts in Los Angeles. And so I do that. Wednesday, I do that. And then I would get everything in, you know, during that time so I could hit that two-week period. And I also think about, you know, I encourage, I always say this on the podcast, like if there's somebody that's thinking about going full time, it doesn't hurt to try to go full time in the summer, right? Act like you're going full time, right? Spend that 1 month just planning out, hey, I'm going to source on these days, I'm going to list on these days, or if you're doing Amazon, I'm going to go source, I'm going to get an FBA shipment out during this time. I think of the 2020 era, right? The golden era of reselling, like everybody calls it. Had I not been full time, there's no way I could have made the money I made in 2020. Like a lot of you guys know how that went, especially if you did Amazon. Amazon was insanity. Eric, you talked about going multi-state, and I shared this on the podcast. Like one of my stories is hair clippers, right? I went to all California, I went to Nevada, I went to Colorado, I went to Michigan, I went to Illinois. Everybody I knew from college, I'm like, hey, can I crash on your couch? I want to go get pallets of hair clippers and send them to the FBA warehouse. You know, and it was a crazy time, but you know, there is so much potential. And I want to encourage, you know, if you're a teacher that's listening and you're like, hey, I don't know if I have the time, it's okay during Q4 to just take 2 personal days off and just go for it, right? Do that FBA shipment one time, see how it goes.
And also, you know, for teachers who are still in it and thinking about getting out, give yourself a goal. Learn how to do $500 a month. Do that 3 months in a row and then raise your number. because that's all I was doing was just, I kept raising my number. How much could I do? And then I got to the point where it was time to get out. So there's little challenges you can give yourself, but also there is so much information out there nowadays. I mean, there's Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. I mean, you can learn everything that we do. You can learn via YouTube now. I feel like it's YouTube University. And you can take little bits and pieces of a Joji interview, an Orlando going on a Saturday pick and doing his videos. You can get so much great information and learn how to do this, and then maybe find a mentor to pull you along a little bit. But there's just so much great information, and I don't ever want part of this doing this with you guys. I don't want teachers to feel stuck. I have so much empathy for teachers that feel stuck, that I want this thing we're doing right now to excite them, invigorate them, and maybe make a change in their life.
Yeah.
And Max, before I have to go, My wife has a church. She teaches church after school, and so I have to watch the newborn. We just had a baby 2 weeks ago. But I just wanted to, before I wanted to plug my YouTube that we just started in March. It's Riverbend Resale. We started YouTube because, just like you just said, like there's no high school course for reselling. There's no college course. I learned pretty much everything about the profession I do now just from watching YouTube videos and Orlando's podcast, him and Mike. And so we just kind of wanted to give back, and that's why we started the YouTube channel. And we're new to it, but it's growing, and it's, again, Riverbend Resale. But I apologize, I gotta go. I think there's a lot more meat on this bone. And
yeah,
you guys,
before you go, I'm going to propose something though, that I want to do this every 6 months with. I want to get back on 6 months, and I want people to watch our journey post teaching every 6 months and see how we're growing or how our lives are changing. So keep that in mind.
Yep, I'll be there. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yep.
Max, talk a little bit about like sort of what advice I'd give for a teacher out there that wants to go full time. It's like you mentioned, like starting with a plan, which just is like having the understanding that, you want eventually to get to a goal, but action needs to happen for you to get to that point. And so, like you mentioned, I would say find something that you actually enjoy doing that you think can actually make money. Because at the end of the day, if you do want to leave teaching and you're going to do this thing, then you should actually like really enjoy it. And I'm not saying that you don't enjoy teaching, but there's a lot to say with the freedom, like we all mentioned here, that comes with being able to do reselling or being able to be your own boss, right? To be in your own business and just see how it goes, right? I mean, you could like Max says, give yourself a easy goal of like, okay, this month, let's see, can we make $500 this month? Can we make $1,000 the next month? And one thing that's important is focus as well. So something that really helped me in my business was reading a book called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz, which is essentially just saying, like, if you think about the people who grow the biggest pumpkins, like they're not focused on anything else but growing pumpkins. Like they're not focused on trying to grow some other vegetable. They only want to hyper focus on where was the seed from the previous winters? What was the soil composition like? What was the weather like? What was the climate like? Like who was the person that planted? Like they are hyper focused on one thing. So I would say, give yourself a plan. I'm going to start this thing. I'm going to block out all the other noise. I'm just going to get really, really, really good and focus on this one thing and really niche down and see how it goes from a month-to-month basis. And I think eventually you'll see that if you really do dedicate your time and effort to something, then you eventually will hit that goal, which is really cool. And the last thing I want to also say is that, the flexibility and freedom that comes with not teaching anymore, ironically, like you actually do become even more busy. And I told my wife this, like, I never knew how busy I would be when I left teaching, because now all of a sudden you have all this time to do a bunch of things that you didn't have the ability to do before. So anyways, my wife is coming home here in a couple minutes as well. And so I'm going to go nap my son as well. So I'm going to have to head out as well, but
it is a different kind of busy though, isn't it?
It is. It's the busy you want, right?
Yeah. You're not locked into that building anymore.
Right. Exactly.
I want to add something. There's a different element now that was not around when I started, and it's this whole Discord, Patreon stuff. Like back then it was kind of like I hate saying this, but it kind of felt scammy, right? Like people were like selling courses or like, hey, come join my Patreon. But that landscape has changed, right? Where like you get into Max's, right? Patreon. Eric, I don't know if you have one. We have our Discord that's like $5.55 a month. It's not much. You have Taking Sports. And, back then I remember when I was trying to learn right? I would watch YouTube, but that's time consuming, right?
Right.
A podcast you can kind of do because you can listen in the background, but then like you try to reach out to people on social media, and that's really tough, right? You might get lucky if you shoot a DM and people will get back to you, right? But you know, the big YouTubers and whatever, like it's very hard to get, you know, hear back from them, right? And but on the beauty of a Discord is whatever Discord I'm not trying to plug anybody's Discord, anybody's Patreon, but the beauty of it is you make that money back so fast, right? You can make that money back within the hour, right? Just the knowledge that you gain, that it's very worth it to join that. And I had that existed back in 2014, 2013. There was no Discord back then. There were a couple Patreons and there was a couple people selling courses, but it wasn't like what it is now. Like I think about these groups that are like hundreds of thousands of people, and there's different channels like, hey, if you're selling this, you can join this channel, or if you just need motivation, use this channel, or if you're an educator, here's the channel, right? So I encourage people. Again, Mike and I have always produced free content since the very beginning, and we always will. But there is this side thing here where it's a whole different dynamic that was not available for a lot of us. It was available for Tim, I know, because he's obviously in our Discord. But for a lot of other people, like I don't know about you, Max or Eric, but that wasn't around a few years ago for us to jump in and talk to other people, which
No,
now it is.
I was completely unaware of it. And then people kept saying to me every time I would do an interview out there, someone would say, "Oh, you need to do your own thing. You know, you're doing books without barcodes. You need to talk about this more." And so my Patreon group, PaperGold, it's, you know, I thought I'd have 30 people in the group, and you know, right now we're pushing 140. And the Discord though, the Discord is jaw dropping to me. It's like an encyclopedia of how to make money on used books. And the members in our group, they're posting their wins every day. So we have this huge scoreboard of $100 wins, $300 wins, $500 wins, $1,000 wins. We have a member who sold the book a month ago for $6,000. It's just jaw dropping to me sometimes. But you know, yeah, I mean, as teachers, you know, the revenue streams we had as teachers is go out, sit in on a class for a teacher who couldn't make it, you get 25 more dollars. I mean, that was the revenue stream. You know, the lives we have now are completely different and foreign to me. I could never go back. If I had to go back, I could never go back.
I think what you just said, how it's so foreign to you, might hit for some people, because I think when you get in any job, teaching maybe specifically, you're just so much in the trenches that you don't even have time to really look your head up and see like what else is available, what else is out there for you. And maybe what we said earlier, you know, teachers had that summer to kind of do that and look out and say like, wait, this is a thing. That's maybe why so many people ended up in reselling that were teachers, because you do meet a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good you say that this is a thing, because I'm looking at Eric. He sells something completely different. He does something completely different than we do. Orlando and Tim, you guys are sort of similar, right? And Joji and I, we both are in the book market, but Joji's selling more the barcode book. I'm selling the non-barcode book. So look at all the different things. For all those teachers out there watching this, pick your lane. There's so many lanes out there.
And
Well,
the beauty of it.
Go
Sorry,
ahead,
Danny,
Eric. Eric,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I always tell people, like, what do you enjoy? Like, do you enjoy fashion? Like, you can sell clothes. Do you enjoy electronics, like hard goods and like electronics and video games? Like, I don't know why those things just kind of came naturally to me. So when I first started, I would like buy these like bundles off Facebook Marketplace. Somebody would be selling a Wii with like 15 games for $100. And like I'd buy the Wii, clean it up, and like I'd sell that on Amazon for 70. And then this game's worth 15, this game's worth 17, this game's worth 6, this game's worth 4. And so, like, you know, is that your world? Is electronics your world? Like, there's options there. Is, like you said, books, collectibles, you know, estate sales, antiques. I mean, I don't know if you, there's a lady I follow on Instagram that her world is like shampoos and discontinued
Sure. Yep.
fragrances and stuff that I know nothing about that world, but like that's what she knows. She can walk into an estate sale and say like money, 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 money. I walk in there and I'm like, that didn't even register to me, because I'm looking at the tools, I'm looking at the, you know, the DVD player, I'm looking at the, you know, whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Eric, can you talk a little bit about what you do? Because I don't know if we got that through, because you are doing something different than all of us. So can you just talk about what you do?
so it's basically arbitrage. It's just, instead of going to Walmart's and Targets and chasing inventory that way, we just open up accounts with distributors. They call it wholesale. So, we're trying to, I was sourcing and getting burnt, not, burnout. It just wasn't as fun as it used to be. And I was like, even if you found a great deal at Walmart, I mean, best case scenario, like, okay, maybe there's 4 or 5 at this store, and I've got 10 or 12 stores within 2 hours of me. And so I might be able to get 30 or 40.
So that person was driving around to all the Walmarts, all the Walgreens, all the stores looking for the same product.
Yeah, and what I wanted to do, I'm like, well, I want to buy this, in cases and pallets. Like, how do I do that? And so, yeah, I mean, basically just, called. Typically, there's a distributor for a category. So there's grocery distributors, there's pet distributors, and you just call them up and you're like, hey, what do I need to do to set up an account and get a price list? They tell you, give you an application, and then from there, it's still using the same tools, and you're just looking at their prices, comparing those prices to Amazon, looking for profit, looking for velocity, and then making a decision to buy. And then hopefully you find enough products where, like you're able to buy, cases and pallets. And then the beautiful thing is, if the price doesn't tank, which it still happens, not to the same degree as like arbitrage, but like if it doesn't tank, you sell out a pallet, you call your distributor and say, hey, send me another pallet, or so it's,
but you're turning around and selling this through Amazon.
Yep. Yeah. Primarily,
I want people to be clear what you're doing.
Yeah. Basically, we sell, literally anything and everything. Like, but most of the stuff we sell is in the grocery space, things that don't have a shelf life or have a long shelf life, that are shelf stable, seasoning, sauces, health and beauty products, shampoos, deodorants, shaving gel, shaving cream, like anything that's,
things that people need.
Yeah. When you walk into a convenience store, you're like, hey, we've got snack foods, we've got, a little bit of everything, but we've sold, I mean, the number of things that we've found to sell, it's crazy. We have our own pet brand that we launched. Thought I had a package around here somewhere, but oh, here we go. We started a private label pet brand. It's called Pasture Paws.
I love it.
And this just started off by calling a distributor. They had all these like random like pet, like different dog chews and treats and stuff like that. And I was just like, hey, do you guys care if we sell this on Amazon? And they're like, no, you can sell it anywhere you want to. You can either sell our brand or you can build your own brand. And I was like, well, if I spend all this time and money to make this rank on Amazon and it's your brand, then what happens if you come in and just kind of decide you want to sell it, And so that's when I was just like, well, let's figure out how to create our own brand. And so that just kind of fell into our laps. But yeah, we're selling new goods on Amazon, and we're buying most of those. Instead of buying it from the retail store, we're just buying it from, a grocery distributor, a pet distributor. We're buying from the people that are supplying the grocery stores.
That's what I love about this conversation we're doing. Everyone's doing something different, and yet each and every one of us is crazily successful. I mean, Saturdays, I can't wait for Orlando to drop his garage sale hauls, because I can tell within the first 10 seconds if it was a good day or a bad day by listening to his voice, because he does these great, he takes you along with him, and he shows you his finds. Orlando, is that still as exciting as it was 5 years ago for you?
Oh yeah, it still is.
Because you never know.
No, I get it. That to me is the best part of reselling. And it's funny, Eric, what he's talking about, like, and no, not trying to throw any shade on Eric, but like, I can't do that. Like, that's just not my thing, right? Like, I always talk about, I started on Amazon, actually. Like, Amazon I was making 95% of my income when I went full time on Amazon. Like, I was getting some eBay scores, but I was doing a ton of retail arbitrage, and I loved it. I loved renting out a van during Q4 and just driving up and down the coast and just sourcing. Like it was so much fun. But then my kids got older and I kind of was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, right? And it got kind of exhausting. And I got tired of packing the FBA boxes. Like I remember sending out like 40 to 50 boxes in a day. And I was just like, oh, like I don't want to do this anymore. But that's the beauty of what we do, right? We have options. Like if I wanted to jump back into FBA, I could jump back into FBA. If I wanted to do private label, I could take that risk and do private label, right? I'm in a place now where I love eBay. Like I love selling on eBay. I love getting up Saturday morning and going out sourcing. My newest thing has been private picks that I haven't shared as much lately, but um, you know, I have people that call me because I've been in the community for so long and I've had so many business cards go out that they just call me and they're like, "Hey, we know somebody over here and they have this huge collection of, you know, vintage Legos and they're thinking of offloading them. Would you be willing to take a look?" And I love going to those, right? That's what motivates me, right?
I
And
remember how jealous I got when you did that Hot Wheels pick.
oh, that was the craziest
I was
thing
so
ever.
jealous of you because
It was
I mean, talk
I
about that real quick because I
so
want teachers to understand there are gold mines out there to find every day.
yeah,
Whether you're doing what Eric's doing or you're going to garage sales like you do and Tim, or you're looking for books, there are finds and there's money to be found every day. But I want you to talk about this one because it made me jealous.
yeah, well, and remember, as teachers, you're all people, right? I
Yeah.
mean, not all people, but you're people persons. Like you're able to talk to people, right? You deal every day with hundreds of people, right? And you make thousands of decisions every day without even thinking about it, right? Subconsciously, right? You meet with parents, you email parents, you deal with drama, right? Now think about if you could channel all that into conversations with people, right, to make connections. Right. I think you again we talk about why are there so many resellers that were teachers. I think one of them is this aspect right here. And so the way this deal went about was I had business cards that were made, and I recommend everybody make business cards.
Of course.
And I would go to garage sales a normal Saturday. I remember there was this one lady that this was like the second time I went to one of her garage sales, and I said, "Hey, I see you always have like stuff out here. You have like Disney and you have Hot Wheels. Like, here's my business card. Give me a call if anything ever were to happen, you know, and you have more stuff." She's like, "Oh, I have there's a possibility of a couple storage units full of stuff if you want it." And I was like, "Well, when the opportunity comes, let me know." And it was interesting because out of the blue I get this text and go, "Hey, it's time. If you want to come to the storage unit, come meet us." I had no idea what I was going to walk into. And long story short, what ended up happening was there was a family that she was helping take care of, like their grandparents, and the grandparents owned this storage unit, but I guess they didn't have a good relationship with their own kids, and so they wanted to give it to her. But she didn't. She's like, "Hey, I just want to make some quick money. I don't care if you resell it. Like, let's take a look." And I go in there, and in this storage unit, it was like, watching Storage Wars, right? They open it up, and you would think this was staged because they
Right.
open it up, and it was Hot Wheels from the 60s, a bunch of red line Hot Wheels. It was new and packaged Hot Wheels from like the 70s, 80s, 90s. Not only that, then there was this whole like vintage Mickey Mouse stuff. I remember, there's like one of those old school Fantasia sweatshirts that I sold for like $300 to $400. I mean, there was all kinds of craziness. I just couldn't believe it. And it was one of those things where I had to decide, like, you know what, whatever cost they say, as long as I can make even 25%,
Yeah.
I'm gonna make a killing. And I always tell people, like, always use your interpersonal skills that you learn from teaching. And
You did make a killing though. I remember you when
I
you were
did
talking
because,
about solds on some of those red lines.
well, here's what's crazy. They said 4,000 at first,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, I don't know. I was thinking more of like 1,000, right? And I know that sounds crazy for people, right? But that's kind of the business, right? You buy low until you sell high, and they were thinking about it. They're like, you know what? We could do it for 1,400. I was like, 1,400. I was like, okay, let's do it. And I remember within a week, I made my money back. I sold a bunch of
Yeah.
Hot Wheels very quickly, and I think I have like 5% of that inventory still left. I actually kept certain things for myself too. I have like a frame painting that's probably worth some good money and all this stuff. But that's the thing. Like, as a teacher, I remember when I really there was those times I really loved going to like conferences and you learn a new skill as a teacher, or you learn new content or how to teach it. It's the same thing with reselling, right? You go in and you find all these new items that you've never thought of before, and you buy it for really low, right? So your education cost isn't that much,
Yeah.
right? And then you learn this whole other field that you're able to make money on. And I think that's what, you know, it causes teachers to thrive because they love not only the hunt, but they also love learning, right? And Eric, I can see he's learned a lot, right? I mean, to go to private label, that's not something you do lightly. Like that takes a lot of research and a lot of time, right? I think of Tim, like Tim, you know, if you catch our podcast, we just interviewed Tim on our podcast recently, and by the time this is released, it's already been released. But Tim had this room full of dolls that he found that he spent 1,000 and he turned it into 15K, right? And so there's all these opportunities out there for people.
Is that what we would all agree to for teachers who are thinking about this, or they started and they want to make a jump? Is, you know, I would say to them, find the groove you want to sell in, find the category. You can be an everything seller. I started as an everything seller. I definitely niched down in the books, but as an everything seller like Tim is, I'm sure he has the opportunity every day to find something he never thought he would find before. So, Tim, you got another great story besides dolls?
Well, no, absolutely. You can find just about everything you're learning each and every day, and I think it's going to be area dependent too. You know, and I've heard people say before, find what is plentiful in your area and profitable. You know, like I'm not going to be looking for necessarily the same stuff. Orlando's always going to be finding, and vice versa. You know, I've got barns and old Western stuff here that's, you know, been buried for ages, and you know, he's got probably more people with money and trendy things, you know, that I'm not going to find. But as far as like culture or culture, as far as like the scores go, another really cool one, just to show like what. So Joji touched on it earlier, and he said he wasn't advocating for that resellers don't add value to society, but we would all know that we do. And one of my cooler stories, with that is going to a estate of a music teacher who had passed, and she had donated her entire estate, right, to a charity skate park that they do, an indoor skate park for kids. And you know, they saw I was picking, and they kind of pull me aside and they say, hey, are you a reseller? I'm like, oh yeah. Said, hey, come with me. So they bring me into a closet, and they show me this microphone that was probably like from the 20s. It was like one of those old ribbon microphones they would use for broadcasting. Just a gorgeous kind of stainless steel kind of look on a stand. Rough condition, but you know, in the end of the day, I paid up for it. I gave them $600, you know, for that thing. And after doing that, you know, I came back the next day to pick it up, and we made sure it was going to work and everything. All the volunteers were kind of sitting in a circle, just kind of watching me take a little "Hey Jude" into the microphone to make sure it works, and everybody. It was great because this is like one of their bigger sales for this charity. Well, I take that, and I'm able to double my money on the microphone after everything. Sold the stand for another $300, right? But I'm able to put food on the table for my family. That microphone then goes to a refinisher in Canada who bought it from me, who then he took that, he paid, I think, 1,500, and he's gonna, or what, he refinished it and sold it to a production company, right? And so you add so much value, because not only is this charity going to get this money that they never would, you know, in the middle of Montana, where are you going to find someone to pay $600 for a microphone? You got to expand that market. So we expand the market for them. You get this guy in Canada who's also going to, you know, put food on the table for his family, who's eventually going to find that forever home in this recording studio where, you know, it found its home. So there's so much value add in what we do. It's amazing.
And who knows what great music is about to be recorded on that after sitting in a dusty closet in an indoor skate park for all those years. Yeah, it's an amazing venture. What advice would you guys give? This is a tougher question. What advice would you guys give to a teacher who's on the fence? Maybe they haven't even started reselling it, but they see what we're talking about. They see our smiles every time we mention money. What advice would you give?
I would say start small. You know, my story is I used to go to garage sales just for fun. Like it wasn't even reselling. And I remember me and a couple guys would go and We're like, oh, look at what we found. And then, this was during the time when like Thrift Hunters came out on A&D and
Oh
Sword
my
Wars and all
gosh,
that.
yes.
Remember that? Like way
Mhm.
back. And I remember I said, I wonder if we could do this, right? And so we all said, hey, we're all going to start with $20 a piece. It was me and two other guys, good friends of mine. And whoever makes the most money by the end of the year owes everybody else dinner. And so I didn't think it was anything serious, right? I was like, well, we'll see where this goes. And I remember, I spent like $5 on an old like welder thing, and it was actually junk. I remember I bought it for $5. I didn't do any research. I
Mm.
took it to antique shop,
We're
and out of
sputtering.
what was that? Am I buffering?
We're sputtering a little bit.
Okay. And out of compassion, I think they gave me $10, so I made $5, right? But then I remember taking that money and going to garage sales, and I'll never forget. A month later, we're sitting at a McDonald's and we're all talking, and we're like, hey, so where are we, right? We all started with 20. My one friend said, yeah, I spent $20, but I'm out. Like I kind of spent this money and I didn't sell anything. My other friend's like, yeah, I have about 2 items listed, and they're like, how about you, Orlando? And I'm like, well, I have 37 items listed on eBay. And they're like, what? 37 items? Right? They're like, wow, are you going full time? Like it was, to me, that was even mind blowing,
Mhm.
right? And what ended up happening was I remember watching Thrift Hunters, and they're talking about Hawaiian shirts at that time.
Yeah,
And I
you're
remember
going, Orlando, you're going back with Thrift Hunters. You know that, right?
I am I'm
Because
going
yeah,
way
for
back.
me, that show was on like 11 o'clock at night on Saturday nights for me.
Yeah. I know. I remember, and I remember picking up one of my first Hawaiian shirt sales was an RJC Hawaiian shirt, and it was like a casino, it was like a Las Vegas thing. And I remember I remember on that show they would sell these shirts for $30-$40, and I'm like, wow, who would pay that? And I'll never forget listing it, and it sold in 2 days for $30. I was like blown away, right?
Yeah,
I think. Go ahead.
the great part about that show is they would take you as they bought, and at the end of the show, they would show you when things sold.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
never forget the first episode. They sold like a old like a elderly like sequin like kind of shirt, and
Mhm.
for like $100. And I'm like, who buys this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it blew my mind. But that's what I think people need to do. They need to get that dopamine hit. Right? If you just say, hey, talk it over with your spouse, or if you're single, talk it over with yourself and say, hey, I'm gonna go $100. Maybe you do the Amazon thing and you test out the Amazon thing, right? Maybe you do the garage sale, maybe you do the thrift store, whatever it is. Start small, but I'm guaranteeing once that dopamine hits, you're gonna go like, I want more, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you're gonna go search for
Eric
more.
mentioned that early on. Eric said it's that hit, it's that injection. I mean, once you make that sale, your first ka-ching, man, could change your life. Your first time you hear that ka-ching, it just changes your life, which it did for all of us. Eric, advice for you?
Yeah, I'm a huge I had a midlife awakening. It wasn't really a midlife crisis, but at some point I'll be 50 in about 4 months. I'm 49. I woke up one day in my early 40s and I'm like, I'm not getting off of this ball alive. Like
Mm.
I got one chance at this thing. I'm halfway through it. Like I guess that would be my thing is like if you're not if you don't love when the alarm goes off, and I'm not saying that every day is going to be beautiful. Like there are days
Right.
when I walk in here, I'm like, frick, I gotta, reconcile the QuickBooks account today, or I gotta, like there's certain things about this job that I don't like, but like if you don't love what you're doing, like, dude, you've got one life, and you don't need anybody's permission to try the crazy thing, like, whatever it is, whatever that passion of yours is, like, I give you permission to go on and try it. But like these guys said, start small. I would say Facebook Marketplace
Mm-hmm.
is a great place. I was like, I wonder if I could find something to make money while we're sitting here having this conversation. So I pulled up Facebook Marketplace and I was just like kind of scrolling through. So my world is and going back to something Orlando said, I love, like, we still sell on eBay. Like my phone just vibrated. I'm like, we sell our private label brand on eBay. I'm like, oh, I just sold a 50 count box of pig ears on eBay while we were talking. But I love the variety of things. I was just afraid that when I started going full time, like, can I find enough consistent inventory? And so I think that's kind of where I settled into Amazon. But But like my world, like my youngest son is a musician. You can kind of see the stage lights and stuff here.
Mhm.
They're using my warehouse space for rehearsal. But like, so I went on Facebook Marketplace and I found this mixer, a Behringer XR 18 digital mixer, very popular in like the music world. $300 on Facebook Marketplace. I'm like, I would start with offering 200, and then we'll see. You know, I was like, hey, is this available? You know, we just take 200, hoping that he'd maybe settle in at 250. Sells on Amazon for 535 used, and eBay comps sold yesterday for 599 best offer, and sold 3 days ago for 450.
What you're doing though right now is you're teaching what we all do. You just
Sure.
did it in a nutshell for
Yeah.
all those frustrated teachers out there that I know we want to hit. That's what we do all day long.
Yeah, and that's when I knew when I fell in love with this was like the time that I would used to spend on social media. Like when I first started, I was literally like, I would get on Facebook Marketplace and I would look for like a bundle, like a DVD or like a video game bundle. And I would literally like look up every single title, like what does this sell for used on Amazon? What does this sell for used on Amazon? And yeah, I mean, so like again, not you not get rich quick money, but like even like I said, if you want the simpler route, and I think eBay is much simpler and easier to get into. Amazon, sometimes the prices tend to be a little higher because there is a little bit more of a barrier to entry. And there's also sometimes people get a little sketched out with eBay because they know they're buying from, you know,
Right.
they even though on Amazon they're buying from third party too, they just don't really think about it. But like if you bought that on Amazon and sold it for 535, that's $144 profit. You know, 48% return on investment on your buy cost if the guy doesn't come down at all. And so like there's a day of teaching, you know, in literally like
Yep.
2-3
For
minutes.
all of us. Yep.
And that's one product that I found on Facebook Marketplace.
In 10 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, Craigslist, Shop Goodwill, you know, the Goodwill bins, if you have those in your area, like the Goodwill outlets, like thrift stores, garage sales, estate sale. Garage sales are such massive opportunities. You know, like that world, there's no other margins like thrift store, garage sale margins. Like, you know, it's the opportunities are endless. And like you said, I would say just try it. Set aside a couple $100. Set aside $200-$300 and just try what any of us have talked about. And if we lied to you, if we failed you, you're out $200-$300. But
then Eric will pay you. Eric will send you
Exactly,
PayPal, and he's loaded. He'll take care of you.
But if
Tim,
we're right,
Tim, what advice would you
Yeah.
give to that frustrated teacher?
Absolutely. I'm going to take a little cautious approach and first of all say it might not be for you. This is not for everybody,
Right.
but anybody can do it. I'll say you are capable of doing this and anybody can do this. I would recommend finding stuff around your house first, right? Anything that you might think is valuable in your own home, maybe small that could fit in like, let's say a 12 by 12 by 12 box or smaller, and go to eBay, hit that blue button that says create listing and kind of walk through the steps and just see, can I list this thing? Can I sell this thing? Is it actually going to happen? And once you've got to that point, then my next action step for them would be to go to Facebook, go to Craigslist, go to a local newspaper and find a bunch of garage sales around you on a Saturday morning. You know, you try to hit as many as you can, and I wouldn't even say start looking everything up right away. Kind of just get the groove of like, what are other people picking up? Because once you see what other people are buying, that's going to give you good insight of like, okay, these are the kind of things maybe I should look at. And then once you've been to a few of them, you're going to see the same crap at all the sales, but find the things that you're not like, find the things, not the things that you see at every sale, but find the things that, hey, I don't see that at every sale, and start looking up those items. And eventually, $50 in your pocket can go a long way to just making a stab at this.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's something that I say to my paper golders all the time. Just because you don't know what it is, doesn't mean it's worthless.
Absolutely.
When you don't know what it is, that's when you need to do your homework.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I think we've taken up 90 minutes of this. I know we could go on for a school day if we wanted to. I want to thank each of you for your time. Please make sure we review the chats once this drops. We are going to get bombarded, hopefully, by a lot of teachers and a lot of teaching questions. I am going to see you guys in 6 months. We're going to report on everyone's progress and everyone's changes in their lives every 6 months on this. I think we owe it to those teachers coming up. And any final words? Orlando, we'll start with you. Any final words?
I just want to encourage people, like, you just got to step out and do it, right? And it's like, you know, when you teach that one class you never wanted to teach, right? But you found it that you enjoyed it, right? Or you went to that conference that you didn't want to go to and you enjoyed it. And the thing is, the barrier of entry is so low. It's so low, right? Whether it's
Very low
EA,
risk. Yeah, very
way
low.
low risk, right? And so I just want to encourage people. You know, it's teaching. If you love teaching and you want to keep teaching, do this still. Because not only are you going to enjoy what you're doing more because you're not stressing about bills, you're going to be able to maybe do even more with it, right? The reality is you want to give yourself that time. So you know, I know a lot of us talked about, you know, escaping the matrix, but a lot of us, you know, like the matrix, right? And you know, I still teach a homeschool co-op once a week and I love doing that. But you know what? I do it because I love it, not because I have to. Right. And that's what reselling has allowed me to do, is to make those choices, make those options. So I encourage teachers, hey, just go out there. Even if it's just to write for your family, for the time for you, whatever it is, it's definitely worth a shot.
Thank you. Tim, final word?
Yeah, thanks, Max, for having us all here
Oh,
today.
you're
I think this
welcome.
is a great conversation, and it's great to vibe with so many teachers in the same spot. Yeah, I'd echo a lot of the things that we've said so far. Just do it. Just give it a shot. The barrier entry is even zero. Like, you could find free things and give this a shot. Things around your house. So yeah, give it a shot.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Just, you know, around your house, you know, stuff in your garage, stuff in your attic, stuff in your closet. You know, you can have an idea of, like, I think this might have some value to it, and just go to eBay or whatever, you know, like whatever platform you feel most comfortable on, and search for it and look and see how often it's sold and how, you know, what it's sold for. And yeah, and I think Tim said too, just like, you know, go to the garage sales and just walk around, look and see what other people are buying. I remember doing that, like going to like book sales and being so overwhelmed because I knew that there were all these, like, because I did books early on too. And I remember just going to a book sale and just like, it's kind of acting like I'm looking at a book, but I'm really like, okay, what software do they have in their phone? What scanner do they have? What's their strategy? You know, but yeah, just it doesn't take, it's low risk, and it doesn't require a ton of capital to get started.
And thank you. The final thing that I'll say is, and we've heard this since day one of our profession is teaching, if you can change one life, that's what they always said, if you could change one life. My final thoughts and encouragement would be this now for the teachers. Now it's time to change your life. Jump into it and now change your life, because all 6 of us on the panel today, this business changed our lives for the better.
Yep.
Gentlemen, I'll see you in 6 months. Thank you.
That's great, man.
Thank you.
See you
See you guys.
Take care, everyone.